It seems the list of potential managers to replace Big Ange Postecoglou as Tottenham boss is narrowing, with reputable reports over the past 48 hours suggesting that Brentford's Thomas Frank is now heading the list being drawn up by the Tottenham hierarchy. Meanwhile, planning for the transfer window continues apace, with the usual bargain basement free transfer links being joined by talk of an exciting French under-21 international. I'll also be poring over the fallout from the Southampton victory as we inch ever closer to Judgment Day. That being this Thursday night's Europa League quarter-final first leg against Eintracht Frankfurt. Can we somehow rise like a phoenix from the flames of this season? Or will Big Ange be carted off in an urn on Friday morning? All this and more on today's Daily Tottenham Hotspur News with me, Barnaby Slater. But I'll start with the transfer rumours, and one coming out over the last couple of days that Tottenham are looking to sign Everton striker Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's available on a free transfer this summer. Now, this one really intrigues me because I've been wondering for quite a while, maybe a few years, why Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't been on Spurs' list. However, I do understand those of you now shouting at the screen, he's useless, his numbers are terrible, he doesn't get on the pitch enough. And one thing I will say is, yes, he gets injured far too often. And considering we already have Richarlison in our squad, who we bought from Everton for nearly £60 million and hasn't played nearly enough, I can see why you would worry about it. However, when Dominic Calvert-Lewin is at his best, he is a handful. He is a proper old-fashioned number 9, and his hold-up play is unbelievable. And in terms of a no-lose gamble on a free transfer, English player, homegrown talent, it might be worth a square. Honestly, when he's at his best, and if you can get him fit, he is almost unplayable. I know he hasn't scored many goals this season, obviously, except for against Tottenham, which we knew was going to happen. Any player who is on a bad run of form, just come and play Tottenham. Don't worry, you will get back into form, and that's what happened with Calvert-Lewin. But I think as a free transfer, it's kind of a no-lose gamble. And if we were going to get, say, 35 million pounds for Richarlison this summer because he's not playing enough, we could do a lot worse than swap him with a free transfer and then reinvest that money elsewhere into the squad. And one player that we could potentially invest that money into is Ryan Cherki. He has a £25 million release clause in his contract. He is an unbelievably talented attacking midfielder from the French league. And I don't know if any of you guys saw the French under-21 game against the England under-21s a couple of weeks ago, but he is just a playmaker. He is the kind of playmaker we haven't had actually since Christian Eriksen. When Christian Eriksen signed for Tottenham, I had seen him when he was like 17, 18 years old, playing against England for Denmark in an international, and he completely controlled the game. And Cherki has that level of talent. Manchester United are also interested in him, so you've got to think it's going to be a difficult signing to pull off. But for me, James Maddison, as our creative midfielder, is not doing enough regularly. He's not consistent enough, and we need to bring at least one player in to challenge for his position. I know Decky Kulusevski, certainly earlier in the season, was taking some of those games away from Maddison in the 8-10 role, but Kulusevski is too much of an option on the right-hand side as well. So, could we bring in someone like Cherki for £25 million, perhaps with that money that we could get in for Richarlison, and maybe even Everton will go in for Richarlison. If they lose Dominic Calvert-Lewin this summer on a free, maybe they'll want Richarlison to come back and start as the number 9 in their new stadium in the Premier League next season. So I wonder if that's a kind of transfer merry-go-round that could happen. Meanwhile, reports from further afield that Tottenham are showing considerable interest in signing the latest Brazilian wonder kid, Ryan, with Liverpool, Aston Villa, Forest, Newcastle and Man United also showing interest in the 18-year-old Brazilian. However, some reports over the weekend that Tottenham are in fact leading the race to sign him. And perhaps when it comes to some of these young players, they will look at how Lucas Bergvall has done at Spurs, how Archie Gray has done in terms of getting early opportunities in the Premier League at I'm going to say top 6 club, because by no means are we a top 6 club literally at the moment. But maybe some of those players will look at the decision that Lucas Bergvall made to turn down Barcelona, come to Tottenham Hotspur, and now he is seen as basically the first name, one of the first names on the team sheet at Tottenham Hotspur, and Barcelona already being reported to be back interested in getting Bergvall, and it would take so much money to get him out of the club now. So I know a lot of Spurs fans aren't going to want to hear this, but some of these young players, exciting young talents, are going to look at Tottenham as, the modern day Premier League equivalent to Borussia Dortmund, a kind of stepping stone club towards the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona. And that is why maybe Johan Lang and Scott Munn are focusing on those young players, get them in at Tottenham and make the most of them, and then have a high sell-on fee for them further down the line. I know it's not the place we want to be. We want to be battling it out for the really big names alongside Man City and Liverpool and Chelsea, but we just don't have that cash in the bank. Daniel Levy and ENIC have never claimed to be willing to spend their own money, so it's got to be sustainable, and this is the way to do it. In fact, it's the way that Tottenham grew from being the club they were when ENIC took over, which was very much a kind of lower bottom half club in relegation battles. But what ENIC did relatively quickly was decide to buy young, often exciting English talent and then sell them on, thinking of the likes of Michael Carrick. And in terms of young players, Dimitar Berbatov, when we brought him in from the German league, and then sold them on for massive profits. We are back in a similar strategy as that right now, and that is why maybe the likes of Cherky and Ryan could be interested. In terms of players that Tottenham are interested in, who could come in and do a job straight away, who have Premier League experience, rumours that we have joined Chelsea and West Ham with interest again in Fulham's Rodrigo Muniz, another Brazilian player. Fulham have him contracted only until the summer of 2026, and they want £50 million for him this summer. Well, I'll tell you this, Fulham, you're not going to get £50 million, not only because you've only got him for another year on his contract, but also because he doesn't start every game for you. So, Tottenham have had him on their list for 18 months or so, maybe a couple of years. We are interested in him, but in terms of £50 million, that isn't going to happen. Let's see what happens in the summer, though. Also, more reports this weekend that we're still in the race for Torino midfielder Samuele Ricci, alongside Juventus, Inter Milan, Liverpool and Man City, and it's probably Ricci, actually. It's spelled R-I-C-C-I. Torino want £30 million for the 23-year-old midfielder. Johan Lang clearly looking at midfield as an area of the pitch that we really need to improve on this summer. And then some really exciting news just coming out this morning that Tottenham have made their first little steps towards offering Lucas Bergvall a brand new contract this summer. And that is in keeping with the strategy I was mentioning earlier. Because if you remember, in the early days of Pochettino, when we started growing together, those players who really improved quickly, the likes of Dele Alli, the likes of Kyle Walker, Danny Rose, they were given new contracts incredibly soon. And that is what is going to happen to Lucas Bergvall. And it's the right decision. Because he only came for, I think, just around £10 million. He won't be on a huge amount wages-wise. He won't be on anywhere near what Archie Gray is on, for instance. So I imagine what Daniel Levy is looking to do is say to Lucas Bergvall, we appreciate what you are doing for this club. We appreciate how much you have improved and how much you have shown that you have adapted to the Premier League so quickly. And we are going to up your wages probably by about 3 or 4 times up to where Archie Gray is, up to where some of those other important players at Tottenham Hotspur are, to show exactly how much we value you, and at the same time to ward off any suitors. Like I said earlier, Barcelona already showing some interest in taking Bergvall. Well, it'd be a lot harder to take him when he's on a new 5 or 6 year deal on probably £100,000 a week or so. Okay, getting into some of that managerial talk now, and I can almost feel the Australian fans watching this and getting angry with me for talking about potential successors to Big Ange Postecoglou, when of course we are still in the Europa League. However, they are succession planning. They are right to be succession planning. That is just realistic. And right now, many people in the Tottenham hierarchy admire Thomas Frank and believe that the Brentford boss ticks a lot of boxes when it comes to his personality, his intelligent approach and his tactical flexibility. He has now been installed as Tottenham's #1 target to replace Big Ange Postecoglou as manager next season, with Johan Lang being a big admirer of the Brentford boss. Now, I said after we played Brentford at the Brentford Stadium a few months ago, I was disappointed with how direct Brentford went against us. However, if you think about it realistically, every opposition knows that one big long ball over our high line works most of the time, and just get a lot of crosses in the box and we will concede. And it just so happened that in that game, Tottenham found a way not to concede against those kind of chances. So in a way, it did show Thomas Frank's tactical flexibility in that he wanted to just try and make the most out of what were Tottenham's fallibilities, really. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. When he managed Brentford in the Championship and brought them up, he had them playing some wonderful football. So he does change things around based on the type of players he has, based on the size of the club compared to the teams he's playing against. And that is why he is at the top of Tottenham's list at the moment. Also, there is some really good footage of Thomas Frank in the changing room as he's managing Brentford. He's clearly an excellent man manager and knows how to get his ideas across. And of course, he's got lots of experience in the Premier League, which, based on the list that Tottenham seem to be leaking out at the moment, which is Iraola, Silva and Frank, they're clearly looking for someone with Premier League experience next. So let me know in the comments how you feel about potentially Thomas Frank being the next Tottenham manager. Would you imagine he'd do as good or better job as Iraola if we were to get Iraola? I know people have started to get angry at the thought of Iraola now just because Bournemouth are on a bad run. But in reality, when you're managing a club like Bournemouth with the resources they've got compared to the other teams around them, of course you're going to go on a bad run. He's done an incredible job there. So I wouldn't rule Iraola out quite yet. Also, some more reports over the last few days that Spurs are trying their level best to avoid losing Decky Kulusevski, who is gaining more and more interest from Serie A. AC Milan and Napoli both looking to take Decky Kulusevski from Tottenham this summer. But for me, they would have to pay an unbelievable amount of money. Considering we got him in for, around £25 million? He's done an amazing job at Spurs. He's grown as a player. He's grown as a leader. He's now the Swedish international captain. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments it would take to get Decky Kulusevski out of Tottenham. But I would say probably upwards of 70 odd million pounds, something like that. Okay, before I go into the fallout from that Southampton victory, please, if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, please do press that subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner. I'm looking to get to 15,000 subscribers, only 500 or so away. I know it's a difficult time if you're a Spurs fan at the moment. Not desperate to find Tottenham content as every other fan is taking the mickey out of us. But listen, the day is darkest before the dawn. Something brilliant could happen, and I'm bringing you daily Tottenham Hotspur content, and I will bring you transfer content throughout the transfer window in the summer as well. So if you like the sound of that, please do subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, please do give this video a like as well. So of course, Tottenham did win 3-1 against Southampton on Sunday. For those of you who saw my instant post-match review, I got quite a lot of anger about how down I was after that game. But I've listened to a lot of the podcasts this week, and it seems kind of on a par with a lot of those other podcasters who I respect, the likes of The Fighting Cock, The View from the Lane, The Extra Inch. If you don't listen to those, make sure you do give them a listen. Really amazing podcasts, as well as The Tottenham Way. They're my favourites. I think those of us who have been Tottenham fans for a long time realise that you can't just get excited because we've beaten the worst Premier League team in the history of the Premier League as it stands. The second half performance against Southampton was unbelievably average. However, I am willing to accept in a way that maybe the players at 2-0 up were like, okay, we've done the job here. Southampton aren't good enough to turn it around. And we've obviously got the Eintracht Frankfurt game on Thursday. So probably took their foot off the gas, maybe 15, 20, 25%. But still, you've got to remember how many people have paid big money to go to that stadium and watch that game, and for us to just knock it around like a training game and then to concede at the end as well and make it a little bit pressurised. Not a great look. Ange Postecoglou said the following. He said it was a good win. The first half I thought was excellent. We were really disciplined and well organised. Didn't really allow them that much. They had one chance, and we always looked to threat going forward. We scored 2 goals, had another one disallowed, and Ramsdale pulled off some good saves, so I was really pleased. Okay, so that's him talking about the first half. I wouldn't go so far as to say we were excellent. I thought we were fine against a team who were just totally devoid of confidence. In fact, the only team I've seen come to Spurs this season and really made Tottenham look like they have confidence. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody else, even Leicester, who lost again last night, that is such an embarrassing run that you see. Leicester lost, I think, 7 or 8 games before they beat Spurs, and then have lost every single game without scoring a goal since they beat Spurs. And that is a bad look for Tottenham and for Ange Postecoglou. So I wouldn't go as far as him as to say the first half was excellent. I'd say it was fine. Anyway, he went on to talk about the second half. He said, not so much in the second half. We became way too passive without the ball. We were not aggressive enough. And then with the ball, we got sloppy and didn't keep possession as well as we should have. So some improvement is needed there. But it's a good win, 3 goals, and important that everyone got through it again. Okay. Talking about the goals, we are the second highest goal scorers in the Premier League. We have a goal difference of above 10. Which is, higher than most of the teams going up towards the top 6 in the Premier League. And yet, we've lost, 20 games in all competitions this season. 16 is it in the Premier League? We don't draw any games. And I know that's in keeping with Ange's philosophy that he brought in when he came to Spurs. But in reality, it's one thing having a philosophy, but you've got to pick up draws here and there. You can't just be losing so many games. You've got to show the desire and the motivation and the will to dig in and find a way to get results, even if you're playing badly. And that's something we've really suffered from this season. Ange went on to say, I didn't want to make too many changes. I thought it was important to get some sort of cohesion moving into the Eintracht Frankfurt game. But for guys like Destiny, Udogie and Mickey van der Ven, it was important that they got a full recovery after a big game on Thursday night. And the guys coming in did really well. We're going to need the squad. We've got them back now, which is great. And we know European games are really demanding. So we're going to need everyone ready to go. Now, does that suggest that Destiny Udogie might play from the start on Thursday night? Let me know what you think in the comments, because for me, I think, especially at home, in a game where I think we're going to need to find a way to take a lead into that second leg, because the second leg is going to be a big, raucous, difficult atmosphere to Spurs to deal with. I think we're going to need Pedro Porro to start at right back against Eintracht Frankfurt to give us some attacking impetus. And then I would probably play Jed Spence at left back, because I think he's more comfortable on the left and I think he's playing better. But that little comment from Ange suggests maybe that Udogie will start. I don't know. Let me know what you think. He talked about Tottenham's first goal, starting with Romero's pass out from the back, feeling like a real kind of Ange ball goal. And it was, to be fair, a beautiful goal. Ange said this, it's a goal that we've done a number of times, but we haven't done consistently. I think in the first half we had many of those moments with Christian back there and Ben. When Mickey plays too, we have centre-backs who are comfortable on the ball and can give us the right pass and find really good solutions. Then it's about making sure the guys further up find the right spaces. I thought in the first half we did that a lot and it was an excellent team goal from start to finish. I think that was a byproduct of us being really disciplined with our football in the first 50 minutes or so. I said in my opening to the watch-along for the Southampton game at the weekend that I'm frustrated at how Tottenham don't score enough different kind of goals. We don't score many goals from set pieces. We don't score many goals from outside the box. And really, it seems to me like we're always trying to score that kind of perfect goal, like we did against Southampton. But the reason we don't do it consistently is because I think the opposition are wise to us trying to do that. And they know how to cut us off early on in that kind of movement and stopping us from getting to the byline as much as maybe we were in those first 10 games of last season for that kind of perfect Ange ball goal. I've told you guys before, when I went to the open training session at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last season, the only drill that the Tottenham team were doing were ways to get to the byline to get that cutback goal scored. That was the only drill they did, and during the open training session they did it for an hour. That's how concentrated Ange is on trying to make those chances specifically. Now, for me, that's all well and good, and when the goals get scored that way, fantastic. But when the opposition know that that's what you're trying to do over and over again, they find ways at the elite level in the Premier League, they find ways to cut it off at the pass, and we need to be able to score different types of goals. And we made a couple of chances from set pieces, didn't we, at the weekend, and had a goal disallowed from Bergvall. But I thought Southampton were weak defensively from set pieces, and not many other teams are going to be as weak as them. So we need to improve those. And I want to see us taking more shots from deep, and I want to see us putting more crosses in from deep as well, and getting players making late runs from midfield. Remember that goal against Man City at the Etihad, the opener, when James Maddison made a late run from midfield. Pedro Porro found him with a delicious cross, and Madders volleys it home. We need more of that. We need to make the opposition think that we can score in numerous different ways. Otherwise, it's just too easy to defend against us. Okay, Ange was asked whether Spurs' performance and result was perfect with Thursday night's quarter-final on the horizon. He said, to a certain extent, I was really happy with the first half, as he mentioned. I thought we were disciplined, organised, and limited them to only one chance. However, in the second half, we allowed Southampton to get a bit of rhythm and we were sloppy with the ball. Overall, the important thing is we got the win, scored 3 goals, and everyone got through unscathed and ready for that big night on Thursday. That's true. The most important thing was that we didn't get any more injuries. Just a couple of little niggles that I'm worried about. Solanke Again, did a lot of donkey work and got a dead leg in the back end of the second half. I thought Ange should have brought him off at that point and brought Richarlison straight on for him. Be interesting to see whether Solanke is 100% fit for that game. We need him to be. And we need to create him some chances. I've never known a striker at Tottenham feed on so little service as Dominic Solanke does. But hopefully he's okay. And then obviously, just when Mickey van der Ven played against Chelsea, he came off with what seemed a little bit of cramp. So hopefully that was just cramp because he was seen walking off the pitch with one boot on and one boot off. And of course, was asked a great deal in his post-match about VAR because of that 5-minute delay to see whether the Lucas Bergvall goal, which was in the end disallowed, was offside or not, and said, I can't believe they brought VAR in for us to wait around for 5 minutes for something that was clearly inconclusive. He was asked about semi-automated offsides coming in next week, which they are. If you didn't know, in the Premier League, in this weekend's games, for the first time, semi-automated offside comes in. Now, for any of you who know a bit more than me, let me know how semi-automated offside works. How does it work? How is it better? I assume there's a chip in the ball, but then how do they know where the last defender is? Like, how are they doing it without the lines being brought in? Let me know in the comments if you know better than I do. Ange was asked whether he thinks that will speed up the process. Classic Ange. He said, I've got no idea, mate. That's the assumption. Again, if you told me a few years ago we'd be spending 5 years during a football match standing around, I wouldn't have believed you. But everyone loves it. Everyone wants it. Everyone's delighted by it. And it's working so well and we're getting all the decisions right. So we shouldn't complain about it. I mean, he's being sarcastic there, isn't he? Lovely Ange with his big sarcasm. I love his sarcasm. I just prefer it to be coming off the back of 10 games won in a row rather than the really appalling form that Spurs are in. But listen, if we can find a way to turn over Eintracht Frankfurt 4-0 on Thursday night, then I'm pretty sure a lot of fans will be back on the Ange train. Ange was asked about Maddison's performance against Southampton. He said, in the first half, all our players embraced both their attacking and defensive roles, and we need to take that into Europe. That's an interesting one for me. I'm going to cut into his quotes there because I don't think James Maddison has been working that hard off the ball over the past few months or so. And I think Ange is frustrated with him at that. And maybe that's a little dig he said there where he said all the players embraced both their attacking and defensive roles. And he went on to say we need to take that into Europe. We know European football, every moment of the game is important. I thought Madders was really good with the ball, but really disciplined without the ball. So he's talking to Madders there, isn't he? Directly through the press. First half, I was pleased with the lads. It can be a game where you go out there and sort of urge yourself or rush yourself to victory. But I thought there was a really controlled way that we went about it without diminishing the intensity we want to play. But that wasn't the case in the second half. Then Ange was asked about Lucas Bergvall. He said I thought he looked a bit leggy on Thursday night. Don't forget, Lucas Bergvall had been... He'd had a bug during the international break and therefore hadn't played despite being picked in the squad for either of Sweden's games. So yeah, Ange said he thought he looked a bit leggy on Thursday night, but I thought it was important for him to get it out of his system because he hadn't played during the international break. With Thursday in mind, I thought giving him 60 minutes on Thursday and another good block against Southampton, and he looked a lot better, physically stronger. And then first half, I thought the midfield three of Rodri, Madders and Lucas were really, really good defensively, but also when we had the ball, they were strong and it worked out well. So that to me suggests that will be the three-man midfield that Ange picks against Eintracht Frankfurt. Lucas Bergvall, Rodrigo Bentancur and James Maddison. What do you think about that? Is that the midfield you would pick? Or would you put Pat Matasar in there for some legs, for some engine, for some up and down, to keep the Eintracht Frankfurt players honest, getting those late runs in behind the back four? Also where Pat Matasar can get in some good positions is out in the kind of inside right position. And he's a good crosser of the ball as well. But realistically, he hasn't been starting games recently. And that's why I think Ange will go with the three he went with against Southampton. Ange was asked about Brennan Johnson's confidence. Of course, Brennan Johnson scored 2 great goals against Southampton. He said, with Brennan, he's always in the areas we need him to be. He's probably one of the most disciplined players we have in terms of making sure he's always in the right positions. And that's why he gets his goals. There have been times this season when his form has suffered because of the team more than anything else. So that's Ange basically saying to Brennan Johnson, it's not your fault. You're getting a bit of stick from the fans because you're not involved in games enough. But you're not involved in games enough because the team aren't getting you involved in the right positions. So I think that's Ange protecting his player there. I like that. He said, I think like we played in the first half against Southampton, Brennan becomes a really important player for us as we're a constant threat, breaking lines, making half-space runs. We were getting balls into the box in the areas we need to, and every time we went forward, we looked like scoring. If we do that, then I think it's not a matter of confidence for Brennan. It just gives you more opportunities. The one thing about him is that he will always be in those positions. So it's up to us to match his discipline in that. Now, I have to say, I wonder if that's a little bit of a sly dig as well at Son Heung-min, because Sonny hasn't been getting to the byline nearly enough, getting those left-footed crosses into the kind of position of maximum opportunity in between the goalkeeper and the back four, and he hasn't been getting enough crosses into the box for Brennan to come in at the back stick, and that is something we need to improve. And I'm hopeful that Sonny, playing against a Bundesliga club, of course he used to play in the Bundesliga, and in a big game, a big European quarter-final, I'm looking for Sonny to have one of his best games of the season on Thursday night. We need him to, and if we could get him a goal as well to boost his confidence, that would be huge. Ange was asked about Matthias Tell. He said it was good for him to get a goal. The guys coming on are really important. I thought Wilson today, as in Odeberg, didn't look ready when he came on and only came to life in the last 10 to 15 minutes. But sometimes these guys coming on are going to be really vital for us in Europe, because you know the ties are going to be really intense and you're going to have to make changes, not just because players aren't performing, but because we need that extra energy. So a little bit of a rocket up Wilson Odeberg there, saying you weren't at your maximum to be ready as soon as you came on. And I think that's important because I think we all would have agreed probably before Brennan Johnson got those 2 goals at the weekend that Odeberg was pretty nailed on to start that Frankfurt game. Now I'm not so sure about it, but if he does start it, then Ange has given him a little bit of a rocket and said to him, mate, you've got to be ready and you've got to prove it. So it'll be interesting to see who starts on the right-hand side on Thursday night. Who would you pick? Would you pick Odeberg or Brennan Johnson? Let's discuss it in the comments. Just before I go on to some more quotes, guys, once again, please do give this video a like if you haven't already. Press subscribe for my channel for daily Tottenham Hotspur content and transfer content. Ange was asked more general questions about the season so far. He said, fair to say this year hasn't worked out. But that's the other thing. We finished 5th last year. In another year, that would have been a Champions League spot. With people, it just doesn't register, and this is where Ange goes on the attack. If you have 5 years at a club and you've maybe 1 or 2 disappointing years, but you have 3 really strong years, you'd say, I'll take that. But here, you can't have 1 good year. And last year was a good year. I don't care what anybody says. We lost Harry Kane. I know everyone talks about our start. We lost Harry. We finished 5th. We changed the way we played. But it seems like, well, you have 1 good year, you have 1 poor year, and then that's it. Let's move on to the next. But that's what I accepted. So I can't sit here and say, oh, woe is me. That's the challenge I accepted. Fair to say at the moment, I'm not doing a good job of turning that mind shift around. But as I said earlier, I'm a fighter. I will continue fighting until I'm told otherwise. So this was actually before the Southampton game, and this was Ange's Antonio Conte moment, really, wasn't it, where he really came out fighting for himself. How do you feel about it? Do you agree with him? I think it's one thing talking about how he did well and came 5th last year, but at the time that he was coming out with these quotes, Tottenham were 15th in the league. We're now 14th in the league, and that is one thing. And yes, we've had injuries, but so have other clubs, and unfortunately the improvement since the injuries have come back hasn't been great enough, I think, to really take the heat off Ange Postecoglou. He went on to say, I've lasted almost 2 years, which is pretty good for Tottenham. At some point, the club needs to stick to something. So once again, he's really pushing this narrative that the cycle of Daniel Levy hiring and firing managers has to change. But I think Ange, he's going to have to do something big in the Europa League to back that up. He really is. And I've said it time and time again, and I'm going to say it again. The fact that we concede the same goal over and over again, the cross to the back post, the cross to the middle of the box, headed in or scored at the back post, it's showing that the tactics do not work in the top division. We don't keep clean sheets. We don't draw games. So although I appreciate Ange for being bullish, I like the fact that he's talking himself up, and I desperately want it to work for him. Something has to change in terms of our defence, in terms of being able to stop those chances being created. Listen, if someone in a press conference asks Ange specifically about those goals and he says, look, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have the personnel in terms of the fullbacks to stop conceding those goals, well, that's another thing. Then he needs to say to Johan Lange, we need to buy better fullbacks who are going to defend the back post. But I don't think it's that. I think that it's because he doesn't ask his wide forwards to help protect when the ball is coming back towards our own goal. And that's why Jed Spence and Pedro Porro are constantly 2 against 1 at the back post. And that is because other clubs analyse us and they show how easy it is to score that goal. And at the elite level in the Premier League, the players are good enough to dink that ball to the back post. Now, is there a question to be asked as to whether Vicario could come and help and try and predict that that's where those crosses are going to come and make a step early to try and punch it out? Maybe, but that is not happening yet. Ange was also asked, is it fair that he's the only person from the club fronting up to the media on a weekly basis? He said, that's not an unknown. It's not like that's changed. I knew that taking on the role. So if I wasn't prepared to accept that, then I shouldn't have taken on the role. I took on the role, so I accepted that challenge. He was asked, how could the club defend itself better? He said, by being more vocal. I hope not just the manager. I think you hear enough from me. You probably hear too much from me, actually. He said, it doesn't have to just be people at the club. I hear plenty of people talking and defending other clubs in the media, but it seems with Tottenham, wherever there's a sore, there's a real pylon to sort of stick a finger in that sore, and then we accept our fate. I think the fact that out of last night, the big story out of it, he's talking about after the Chelsea game, is that my interaction with the fans, the big story out of it was my interaction with the fans, meaning when he cupped his ear, and not the fact a game of football was materially changed by technology. And again, I know people will say, well, we got to the right decision. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how VAR said it's about being clear and obvious, but 6 minutes for clear and obvious, I thought that would be the story from last night, but it's not. Well, listen, I think Ange there is deflecting very heavily, because I would still say cupping your ear to your own fan base, not a good look, mate. Not a good look. Ange was then also asked during this kind of big rant. Like I said, this was really his Conte moment in his press conference after the Chelsea game, before the Southampton game. He was asked about the Tottenham role being different to his other roles at previous clubs. He said this, it's just different. For sure it's different, but I kind of knew. I knew that coming in. If anyone comes into this role and thinks it's going to be a smooth ride or an easy ride, knowing the history of the club, I think don't take the role. So none of it's surprising to me. I knew what I was taking on. I knew it was going to be a tough gig because there's a whole weight of things you're trying to rail against. So from that perspective, it is different to other clubs I've been at. But other clubs have had different challenges that you can overcome. A lot of it is also how the club is viewed externally. There's never any sort of defending of the club or the club defending itself. It seems like to me, which makes it even more difficult because every club goes through tough moments and it's how you react to them. That's a unique challenge, but I accepted that challenge, so I've got to find a way to overcome it. Listen, I think a lot of people talk in the media about, oh, it's just Tottenham and, you know, that word that I refuse to use and whatever. But people seem to forget that only 5 years ago, we were in the Champions League final. And during that 5 years where Pochettino was the manager, it wasn't like this at all. Don't forget, Gary Neville and a lot of the other pundits back then, they said Tottenham were their favourite team to watch. They loved Tottenham. They wished Tottenham could win something. So things go in peaks and troughs, and the needle has moved back now to people taking the piss out of Spurs, and that's the truth. But it can change pretty quickly if you have the right man playing the right style with the right players, and that's where we need to get back to, and I think the transfer strategy is trying to get back to that. And if Ange Postecoglou can win the Europa League, and he can buy some players who he thinks can defend better next season and stop those kind of similar goals going in, then as far as I'm concerned, it could well happen quickly again. But he's put himself under a great deal of pressure to win this game, this two-legged tie against Eintracht Frankfurt. And to be honest, it's not just about the two-legged tie, because if we lose by a goal or two, well, let's say if we lose by 2 goals on Thursday night in that first leg, he might well get sacked on Friday. I made that joke in the opening, didn't I, about him being carried out in an urn, because he wouldn't be rising like a phoenix from the ashes. I think he would get sacked on Friday if we are 2 goals down after that first leg, because then Daniel Levy would think it's more chance of turning that round away from home with a managerial bounce, even if that was Matty Wells taking over or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments. Ange was also asked on whether winning a trophy is the only way to quieten the noise. He said, probably, from that point of view. I think you're right there. I'm well into my second year, and if people don't really see what I'm trying to do at this moment, I don't think they're ever going to see it. So a trophy is the only way. It seems to be the only way. Well, okay, let's see if we can deliver that and see what happens. Ange was also asked about his reaction to fans. He said, that's a super point. I'm glad you asked me. It's something I'm definitely going to fight against. If somebody says to you, that was a good article last night, but I don't like that point you made, he's talking to the journalist, you go, okay, mate, and you might just walk off. He's talking about basically fans sticking their phones and video phones in his face and trying to get him to react. He said, these people are not really interested in me answering the question. They just want a reaction. They want their 5 minutes of fame because that's what the phone gives them. Ange was asked as well about taking social responsibility, i.e. why he's talking so heavily about how he feels like kids sticking their phone in his face and looking for a reaction is wrong and is kind of the state of affairs in the country right now, in the world right now. He said he feels it's right to take social responsibility. Sometimes you've got to do the right thing. It's what I believe in. I've said many times, I've made a real conscious effort of not letting the game change me as a person. It's what I believe in. I'm not a perfect human being. I've made plenty of mistakes, but there are certain values that I'll carry through until the day I die. Okay, so that was Ange's rant. Just some other news. Son Heung-min joined an exclusive club in the game on Sunday afternoon. His 450th appearance for the club. That puts him in 7th place in Spurs' all-time top 10 appearance makers. Perryman first, Gary Mabbott, then Pat Jennings, Cyril Knowles, Glenn Hoddle 5th, Ted Ditchburn 6th, then Son Heung-min. Hugo Lloris is 8th, Alan Gilzine and Jimmy Dimmock make up the top 10. Son Heung-min was asked about his relationship with Harry Kane. He says, we still talk. Obviously, I miss him. I think he's a fantastic player. He makes wingers look better. I hope that one day, even if it's just in a charity match, we can play together again. Listen, that's another thing that shouldn't be forgotten about Son Heung-min's drop-off. Harry Kane made everybody around him, a better player. He made chances for them. He scored the chances that they set up for him. And we are still suffering from not having Harry Kane. We were lucky to have him, and maybe we don't realise, despite how many goals he scored for us, and Harry's the club's top all-time scorer, maybe we don't realise how lucky we were. And Pedro Porro just gave some quotes on the season. He said, I think the season has been difficult, especially when you're not winning the games despite playing well at times. In my opinion, the team has played quite well. Just I admit the results haven't helped us. I would like to thank the fans for staying patient with us this season. I understand people want to win the games, but sometimes this is football. Also, having players out injured for a few months was difficult, but the team kept pushing. And now in the last part of the season, we have the Europa League. I think the most important thing for us is the winning mentality. For the rest of the season, for me, the one thing is to keep going and focus on winning the last games, as this is what we can do. We can win a trophy for the club, so it's very important. And former Tottenham captain and gilet-wearing manager Tim Sherwood said this, I still believe, and I will say it now, Tottenham can win the Europa League. They can win it, and they will go to the Champions League next season off the back of it, and there will be a statue of Ange Postecoglou outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Well, listen, I will polish that statue myself, Big Ange, if you win us that Europa League and get us into the Champions League and shut every other fan from every other club up, and frankly, shut some of us up. Because I'm not sure it can happen, but if it does, I will be there for that open-top bus parade. And I'll polish the statue for you, mate. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this. Please do give the video a like. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Daily Tottenham content and transfer content as we get closer to May and that window opening. And enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays. Come on, you Spurs.